maybe the challenge is the role of the CIO dead?
Hey everyone, today we're joined by Nicola Dorling, Group CIO from Downer Group. Nicola has vast experience across a range of different industries and organisations. She was the #2 CIO in CIO magazine of 2024 and brings vast experience in managing digital programs across large-scale enterprises. Today we unpack with Nicola what it takes to start, scale and run a data and AI practice within a major digital organisation. Today we're very lucky to be joined by Nicola Dorling.
Hello.
In the Factory Fireside. Welcome.
Thank you.
And really the theme that we're exploring today is leading digital enterprises at scale in the age of AI. Now, we will get straight into it, but
Sure.
Nicola has a really, I guess, unique background in the technology landscape. And you started as a CFO.
I did start as a CFO.
Chartered accountant,
Yes.
and moved through, I guess, options of different in-house consulting. You worked as a chief digital officer. You are now the group CIO of a large Australian organisation.
Yes, I am.
You've been a partner at Big Four. You've
Yes.
been an executive general manager at one of the major ERP players as well. So a really diverse set of skills. And so we're super lucky to have Nicola join us today. And we'll
Thank you.
look at exploring and pulling apart what it takes to lead an enterprise technology program in the world of data and AI. So the first bit I want to talk about, and I guess it's very topical. Every week now, we are engaged in conversations with organisations about AI. As someone that participates at the executive and board level,
Yep.
how's that being communicated down in terms of the need, the requirement, and how's the CIO community responding to that?
Sure. I think for all organisations, for executive and boards, most organisations obviously realise AI is important to supporting the organisation with productivity, efficiency and also growth. So for the boards that I interact with, that's what they're interested in. How can we make the organisation more productive? How can we make it more efficient? How can AI support us in growth? But obviously for boards, it's also about the fact that we need to make sure that we've got the appropriate policies and that the organisation actually understands what those policies mean and are working within those. And that from an AI perspective, we're also looking at it aligned with our risk guardrails.
So we're seeing like the two sides of the conversation play out. One is we need to drive a value creation agenda through this so we don't get left behind. And the second part is, but there's also this real concern of risk and ethics and all those things that we need to effectively play by as well. So both of those are playing out. Ultimately, it's finding its way to people like yourself.
Yeah, and I think, that's where the challenge comes in, because the role of the CIO, I think, is changing, because predominantly before it would have been about platforms and, structuring data. Now it's very much about working with the board on what is the strategy, what are your use cases, how do we support you to work through value creation ideas, and then how do we execute those? But while we're executing them, making sure that we've got the appropriate cybersecurity, data security and other guardrails.
Yeah.
And that we're actually making sure that the organisation also understand how to work within the policies and procedures related to them.
Yep. And so for our data and AI program leaders that tune in here, how do you get started in this? And I just want to preface that a little bit. That when I think about most organisations, let's take product, tech, and consulting out of it, right? Doing a little bit of research on this is that if you less than 200 people, you probably don't have a data scientist. If you're more than 1,000, you've probably got a handful. Having deep AI expertise within organisations is not necessarily something that is incumbent in a lot of organisations at the moment. So when you're trying to kickstart the program under those conditions where you've probably never done it before, you probably don't have the technology infrastructure, the capability, all those challenges that a lot of organisations face. How do you get started? What's your perspective on?
It can be very overwhelming. The way that I think about it is bottom up and top down. So for organizations that I work with, and also in the role that I've got today, getting the foundations right is really important. So just like if you build a house, in data and AI, you need to do the same thing. Get your platform set up, make sure that you're ingesting the right data sets internally in the organization so you can get to one version of the truth. And then the top down piece is then about working with the executive and the business on what's the strategy, how do we help you, what are your use cases. And then, as you say, like most organizations, if you've only got a smaller organization, you're not going to have data scientists in your organization. And even in large organizations, we're not necessarily going to hold those roles within our organizations either. So then it's finding a really good partner, such as yourselves, to actually work with, to then say, right, now I've got my strategic view of what I need to do and I've created my architecture. How do I then start to iterate and deliver value?
Yeah. Great. And so just in terms of that, the kind of the top down, bottom up approach in there's lots of starting points, and really keen to get your views on one starting point that's very prevalent at the moment is the proof of concept, the AI proof of concept. And so, there's no earth shattering revelations here. It's been around. I've come through the machine learning days into the AI days. 80-90% of these things don't really ever go beyond the proof of concept.
Correct.
They don't get into prod. They don't reach adoption within an organization. And so there's a lot of organizations kickstarting their journey right now with proof of concepts, right? And so given those metrics of failure rates and all that kind of stuff in there, why do you think so many of these POCs are not reaching production, not reaching adoption? Could be a lot of different facets that make that up, but why do you think that they're not getting there?
So I think it's part of it is about, organizations want to be focusing on innovation. So, you can get directives from leadership to say, well, what are we doing from an innovation perspective? Yeah. We need you to be showing value. So then you obviously have teams and organizations that then go, well, we need to do a POC. Now, it's okay for POCs to fail, but from my perspective, and I don't really like the word POC, but from my perspective, it's really about the organization actually understanding what it's trying to deliver from process reimagination and business model reimagination. So again, it goes back to the strategy. What are you trying to achieve? What's your process augmentation? And then even if you are going to do proof of concepts, how do you create value by adding them together to actually get an outcome? Yeah. Why do they fail? From my perspective, it's really around adoption. It's adoption from a people perspective. So the business people not really understanding how to get the value out of the proof of concept. It's also about scalability. So many organizations do a POC, right? And they might get an external consulting firm to come in and help them with that. But then in the organization, do I have the right technology architecture? Do I have the right people in my team to be able to run the POC once the consulting firm have gone? And do I have the right business people that actually know what to, make business decisions from the POC? So for me, it's a kind of operating model question. Yeah. Like, do you have the right operating model set up to be able to, create value from your POC once you've actually delivered it?
Yeah. So just to sort of take that, let's make sure we've got the right initiative that we're working on. There's a value proposition. We're thinking more holistically about the technology and framing and architecture that needs to be in place. There's this capability layer that you actually need beyond the POC. The idea of consultant comes in, builds me something with technology I don't have, skill sets I don't have, and I have no idea how to move it beyond. Let's avoid that. So if I'm a data and AI leader and I'm in a big organization coming to like a CIO or a chief digital officer looking to get endorsement for a proof of concept in AI, then what does good look like in terms of the presentation to you? What are you going to green light and why?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, as a group CIO, I report to the executive and also to the board. So I'm really interested in value creation. But what does value creation mean? So obviously, I want to make sure that, it can be delivered within my architecture, that it's got the latest machine learning models or agentic AI within it, that it can be scaled. But then the most important piece for me on the use case is actually, how have you actually worked with the business to understand that that is actually going to create value for them.
Mm.
And as part of your POC, how are you going to iterate it with the business to be able to make the business ready to utilize this as an ongoing deliverable? So that's really what good looks like from my perspective.
I remember you talking about the lessons you learned through your career, and you never want to be on the receiving end of you've created a super complicated answer to a question nobody asked.
Correct.
And nobody knows how to use.
That's right.
Excellent. Very good. And so just another bit, and like one of the things I'll say with POCs, because they're everywhere at the moment, right? In there is, let's look at this from two angles. One, you as the technology leader, and two, as a team. When do you kill a POC? And when should a team know when to pivot? Because for me, it's okay, but don't exhaust the entire funds if you realise in day 1, 2, week 3, it's not going to get there.
Yeah.
From your perspective, when would you kill a POC? And when should a team kill a POC?
It's a great question. From my perspective, and obviously, as you mentioned before, I used to be a CFO, so I'm really data and numbers driven.
Yeah.
So if I work with my technology team and it's going to be really difficult for me to integrate it into my environment and it's going to be high cost, I'll kill it. If I work through the data and we work through the fact that the data is not delivering the value creation outcome that we thought it was going to do, then we'll kill it. The most important one, though, is if I can't get the business buy-in to the POC, and then, as we said before, it becomes a great idea that nobody's going to use, then to me, then that idea is gone.
Yeah, and I guess there has to be legs beyond the POC too, right?
There has to be legs beyond the POC. You have to be able to scale it so it becomes a business as usual within your organisation. Yeah. Now, with your teams, that's a different question altogether, because being technologists, we love to play with technology. Yeah. And so actually teaching your teams to actually be a bit more ruthless in when they kill something. Yeah. That's something that we talk about all the time.
And how do you embed that type of culture within a team? Because it can be daunting to come to, the sponsor of a project. You've got funding, you've been through the process, you get in, and you realise we just don't have the data. Yeah. It's not feasible to do this solution. The business is not interested, and like having done hundreds of these things, you can get that read pretty early. And so, how do you, as a leader of technology, kind of push that culture that it's okay to fail fast and move on?
Yeah, it's really important. So what we do in Downer and also other organisations is we have a challenge panel. So we've got 4 BU heads of IT as well as the Downer digital function. And what we do is we challenge our use cases and our POCs, and we challenge, are they creating value? And then as a leader, your people need to know that it's okay for it to fail. Yeah. I think it's all about us making sure that they understand that, so that we don't, continue trying to deliver things that we know aren't going to deliver value.
Just to change gears a little bit, and this question is really born out of one, having run fairly major data and AI programs in the past. And my career, I went through consulting to in-house to private equity to running my own business. And my view on that is you kind of go in consulting where you solve a lot of problems. You don't do a lot of implementation and deployment. You go in-house, you now have to own it and deliver it and manage it. And then you go to private equity and it's all about value creation, right? Yeah. I don't really care how you get there, but I want to see the impact on that. I've also been in that situation too, where you go into an organization because the senior executive is going, I really don't think I'm getting value out of my investment in data and AI. And so, you have your bits that you look at first to go, how do I know a program's working? Like, what are the bits that you go and look at immediately to say, yep, this program is on track and it's delivering value? So if you get posed the question as a technical leader, how do you know that your data and AI program is delivering value? How do you unpack that?
How do I unpack it? Yeah, great question. When we create data and AI programs, I'm quite stringent about the way that we think about the hypothesis question and the value drivers. And obviously, as you said before, I also worked in consulting. So we try and make sure that the problem statement is meaty from the beginning. Oh, yeah. But then it's actually about, as we are trying to deliver the program, it's cross-checking every element of it. People, process, data, technology. Are the business people buying into the program? Are they ready to adopt the program? Do we have the right process flow of how we're actually trying to work with the business, embed this in the business and deliver it to the business?
Yeah.
And then from a technology side, it's just making sure what is the speed of delivery that we are undertaking, and is it going to be successful?
Yeah. And so hard numbers, hard metrics.
Hard numbers, hard metrics. And I guess, you talked about value creation. The role of the CIO, is now about financial numbers. If I can't prove that any use case I'm delivering has got a positive ROI, then when I go to the board, they're going to ask me, just like they'll ask the CFO, well, why are you doing that program if it's not going to deliver a return on investment? So I think, the role of technology, for technologists, it was all about the technology, and we tinker with it and we deliver it and we deliver value, absolutely. But now it's actually being able to prove that with a financial model. And so we start all our use cases as part of a value driver tree. And that value driver tree needs to roll up to the financial metrics of the organization, but also to deliver against the strategy. So how do I prove that my use case is going to deliver against my Horizon 1, 2, and 3 deliverables?
Yeah. So everything comes back to like a revenue up, cost out,
Cost
safety.
out, margin, gross margin, safety metrics, sustainability metrics, and my people metrics.
And so then working backwards, that initiative then has to line back to like a strategic priority, a principal risk, innovation.
That's right.
'Cause that's where all the, I guess, the money and the executive support comes in, right?
Yeah. So everything that we do is to deliver the strategic initiatives related to the strategy for, the board and the analysts. And so we ultimately need to be able to prove our delivery of that value as part of the overall enterprise value model that, forecasts out the target share price of the organization.
Yeah, awesome. And so, so if you're a data and AI leader looking to run a program, be really focused on the alignment of the initiatives you're picking, making sure you've got clear metrics on how it's going to deliver value, but on the back end of that, also just making sure that you're actually going to be able to prove out some of that value as your program runs.
And I think the most important thing as a data and AI lead is working with the people. So keeping them sticky through the process so they understand what you're doing it and why you're doing it. Because I think, as you said before, you can have the best data and AI program in the world, but if you've worked on it in a bubble and the organization doesn't understand it, then you won't deliver any value from it.
Yeah. When, again, I speak as a data scientist, a practicing data scientist for many years, and you don't want to be the faculty of data science.
That's right.
Kind of working on quirky problems in the side and then trying to find a home for it somewhere in the business.
Or being very theoretical and then not being able to implement it. And I think we talked about why do POCs fail, but I think why do data and AI programs fail? It's often because of those elements.
One of the things that I think you've done exceptionally well in your career is that idea of having bold vision and North Star of where we want to go. That's great and that's wonderful, and to have a bold vision and present a picture of what good looks like in a future horizon state. But I've always said it's like 20% strategy, 100% execution.
Absolutely.
And so I think one of the things you've been really successful in your career is connecting that execution gap from bold vision to actually getting it done, which is really hard to do. And I think it's a skill set that is not all that common in the market necessarily, and people that can think big but also deliver hard. So I'd love just if you can unpack your thinking on how you go about that. Yeah,
it's a great question, because I agree with you. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't execute it, then it's just a fancy piece of paper.
That's right.
So I have a relentless focus on delivery with my team. We have a daily stand-up, a weekly stand-up. You do the same in your data and analytics. But it's really challenging yourself to say, what have I actually delivered this week? What value have I actually created? And it's actually just about that relentless focus. But I think it's also about having a little bit of resilience as well, because not everything goes right. So I think part of that execution journey is also knowing, like we said before, when to stop, when to pull the plug, when to pivot. With having your North Star in mind, but it's not a straight line journey to get there. So making sure you know that and you can pivot is really important.
Yep. And so in terms of the, you're very senior technical leader in an organization, and you're getting all the way, like you've got your operational execution, which is generally like layers below, right? How deep should the technology leader go? How much should you empower the people just directly below them to make sure that you don't lose the execution cadence? So it sounds like that you're very involved in the setting of the North Star, but also in terms of
I do.
getting visibility of the actual execution
That's
chain.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think for technology leaders these days, setting the North Star and the vision is really important. You need your whole technology team understanding what you're doing in Horizon 1, 2, and 3. But then understanding that to deliver Horizon 3, you need to start it now.
Yeah.
And then it's, your relentless execution on all your strategic projects. And then, say I've got 12 strategic projects in my portfolio as well as my BAU run. So this is the other challenge for technology leaders. How much time do I spend on my run versus my programs, my data analytics program? And then I do, and I make sure that my leaders do. I'm constantly focusing on going into the stand-ups, making sure people are delivering. I go in there as a role myself as a challenge panel. Prove to me that you're delivering value. Be able to pitch to me in 3 minutes on what you're actually doing and what value it's delivering to the organization. Yeah. And I think, everybody having that constant focus on value is something that, makes it successful.
Yeah. And like, where does it go wrong? Because I mean, we don't need to talk about the history of digital transformations and things that have kind of come apart.
70% fail, I think McKinsey said at one point in time.
Like, where does it go wrong? Because the bold visioning is there, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you had to put your finger on the one or two things that you think are most impactful.
People always. So you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have the right people capabilities and the right mindset in your organization to transform and iterate, then it's very hard for you to move and transform. So we talk about skill set, tool set, and mindset. Tool set, I think, it's a given. You've got to get the right tools. I think people focus too much on the tools, not enough on the right capabilities, and certainly not enough on changing people's mindset. I think the other piece in most organizations, if you think about the majority of organizations, we're industry 3.0. We have industry 3.0 operating models. Yeah. And as we're moving at scale for what we're seeing in data and AI these days, we need to be able to have the appropriate agility to be able to transform at speed. And I think for most organizations, that's the operating model structure and concept is where we also go wrong.
Yeah. Cool. Kind of dig in on that, because I always like to ask people that if you had to put your finger on the most important element of success within your program.
It's definitely people, but to be honest with you, Pete, it's also about the partnerships that you have with vendors such as Insight Factory, because in an organization, you've got your capabilities, but they need to be augmented. You're never going to have every single skill that you need to be successful. And you shouldn't hire all those either. So I think it's really about working with vendors on your strategy that really understand your strategy, want to be part of your strategy so that you can actually deliver it at scale.
Yeah, 100% capability. You can't find them all. You can gap fill through relationships. How do you go about finding the right people, and what are the characteristics and traits that you look for in people that you know are going to be great?
Yeah. So first of all, probably talk about characteristics and traits, and I'll go, how do I find these people? Two very different questions, but also hard on both sides of the fence. I think for successful data and AI programs, we need hardworking people, that learn fast, and the speed at which AI is changing the way that we work is just exponential. So people need to be curious, but they also need to have a significant amount of resilience. Because to iterate those programs within an organization, especially an organization that might be industry 3.0, that, most organizations and people don't like to change. Yeah. So you've got to be able to have hard conversations, to be resilient, to pivot. And you've got to be curious about the numbers and things such as that. So, it's a bit of a unicorn that you're looking for these days.
If I can sort of double down on that a little bit. So how do you test for that?
How do I test for it? So, I think, how do I find them is
because people are very good at interviews and answering interview questions.
Correct.
And all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
So how do you double down on going, okay, I'm really interested in resilience and people being brave, because I can sit there and tell you all those wonderful things. So if you can articulate yourself well, you can come across as a superstar, right? So how do you kind of get below that in it?
I think when I'm trying to look for people, first of all, I try and go through networks, because like knowing the right people is is also helpful. But if I had somebody come into an interview that wasn't from a network, that obviously none of my extended networks had known before, testing the capabilities, to me it's about actually giving people a use case, getting them to iterate it in a team environment with other people, because like you said, you can say all the right things, but it's actually, I'm looking for how you're going to execute it, how are you going to work with different personalities, and they're the things that I look for.
And so with that, I think we've all been through the process of bringing people in. It's just not a fit, right? And so, and I think fit for me is like a bi-directional thing. Like
correct.
they've got to love it, you've got to love them for it to work. And so I think one of the hardest things for people leading programs, if I think data and AI programs, is that that it's not working. And so just keen to get your thoughts on how quickly do you think that it's not working? Do you end it quick? Do you persist?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like the proof of concept, isn't it? In the sense that it needs to be bi-directional. I think anybody that is in any organization that knows it's not working, it's usually two ways. And so it's getting each side of the fence kind of understanding that quickly. But just like proof of concepts, if it's not working, you need to call it. So, anything between 6 and 8 weeks is probably what you need to do. Because like we said before, there are plenty of, individuals in data and analytics that are very theoretical and can't actually apply it to business. And that's okay. But, there are different roles for those types of individuals. And so making sure that you've got people in the team that can actually deliver for what the organization needs at the level of capability of the organization and the culture of the organization, because, not everybody can fit into every single organizational culture.
So obviously great people are super important to the success of your organization, bringing them in, making sure they're the right fit, but also being able to just kind of call it if it's not working. So given the gap fit and the scarcity of talent, is that how you work with consultants and consulting firms to do that? Is that kind of the default value prop for you at the moment, or is it more broad than that?
I think it's more broad than that for me. There's a couple of things there. We talk about data and data scientists can be quite academic. But I mean, I sit on the board of one of the larger universities, and I think what's really important as people are going through the faculty of data and analytics or data science is that they get the ability to do applied use cases to the models that they're building, so that they're actually learning as they go. And then when I'm using consultants, I've got another question to raise on the consulting side of things. As we get more agents into consulting, is consulting dead? And we can talk about that in a moment. But for me, the use of consultants are to augment the skills that I've got in the organization, because I'm never going to be able to hire, as you said, there's scarcity of resources at the moment. I'm never going to be able to hire the number and the capability that I need at scale to be able to deliver what I need at the speed I need to deliver it. So consultants have absolutely got a place in larger organizations to deliver AI.
Yeah, I think when we go back to your description there of people and what you're looking for in the traits of people, and I think we've both been in the consulting world.
We have.
And, kudos to them. The people you get from the Big Four and places like that, they are very intelligent, highly motivated, extremely resilient, and they demonstrate those capabilities. And so, they
and I think that they've got the right capabilities. And, I think with the use of AI, the younger consultants these days can get to an outcome faster than we ever could when we were in consulting. So there's definitely a place for them in the organization, because we just don't have the capacity and scale to be able to do it without them.
So just to pick up on one of the things you said there as well, I think it's a bit of a loaded question. How is the world of consulting going to be impacted by AI and agentic capabilities?
I think it's a great question. I mean, being an ex-consultant and obviously an ex-partner in a consulting firm, I have a bit of a different view on it. Everyone says, consulting's going to be dead, the rise of the agentic AI and and that's it. But I actually think what it's actually going to do is invert the pyramid.
Mm.
So I think for partners in consulting organizations, they're going to see the opportunity. They're going to see, well, with the use of agents, I can get 5 times as much done
Mm.
at a faster rate, and I can make more money on it. I'm going to make more margin. I think for the junior consultants, it'll be about how do I use the agents so that I can get my deliverables done faster, so that I can actually work on the interesting so what. What always interests me is the literature at the moment, though, that says the more that you use agentic AI agents, you're not actually using your brain. So then I question, as we invert the pyramid, is it going to be the partners that are delivering the so what or the juniors? But I think, look, there's definitely a place for consulting, and I think that there always will be.
Yeah, no, I love the contrarian view of that as well. And again, I agree with you. I think that these places are full of smart people, right?
Oh, very smart people.
And I think they see the revenue opportunity
Absolutely.
to do more with less and fatten margins. I do see that inversion playing out in there. I think it's a really interesting watch this space. It's also interesting if we think about like the coding agent part, all the agentic coding, all that stuff that's coming through, you've got waves of traditional coding into completions, into vibe coding, into coding agents, and then clusters and fleets. And we're going to have this like unbelievable capability to be able to deliver software and outcomes within organizations. And I read a great article, which I'll share in the links below, that talked originally about the death of the junior developer. And, the thinking was, with all these capabilities coming through, people are going to have senior dev, and the dev is going to, are going to direct agents and then clusters and fleets. And there's no need for the junior dev to do that. And so to just, I guess, challenge the perspective of the seniors taking it on, another article comes out that says, well, maybe I wasn't quite right about the death of the junior developer, because the junior developers are the ones that are taking it on, and they're becoming extremely good in this new agentic landscape of building code and all that kind of stuff. And maybe the seniors are not adopting it as quickly. And so you get presented with this idea of, I can have a junior resource at a far lower cost, marshalling a fleet of agents and doing what I need. That sounds pretty good to me.
Absolutely.
As opposed to so it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the same landscape, as whether the senior people in those areas have the same appetite for adopting changing technologies as we see the vigor that it's being adopted with in the junior layers.
Yeah, and I think I agree with everything you've said there. I think the way that the junior levels adopt agentic AI and the use of all the different models it's just unbelievable. And I think, even as more senior individuals, we are curious and we want to learn, but, we just can't adopt it at the scale that they do. I think that's the same in companies.
Yeah.
So most companies have been established for a long time. They're in industry 3.0, I said before. And, the scale of personalization that is required nowadays just means that you've got to be nimble on your feet, and you've got to be constantly learning at the speed that's required. And I reckon that's going to be a challenge for all of us.
Yeah, and especially, as you get into more senior positions, you've got so much to do, right?
That's right.
Your ability to be narrow and focus and learn in a particular pillar is really hard, because you've got to be across a million things. And so, even sort of leadership adaptation in this space might be about how do we continue to learn and educate ourselves in these spaces.
And, take what we've learned from innovation thinking and, work out how we're actually going to deliver the additional 20 percentile.
One of the other areas, just to kind of keep playing that through, because I think it's a fascinating thing for a technology leader, in particular in sort of the data and AI space, is as this whole agentic wave continues to hit, and obviously the board's thinking about it, the executive's thinking about it, you're thinking about it, how it's going to change organizations, and really keen to just, I guess, dive into, you've been an EGM at a major ERP provider. Yeah. You have looked after massive portfolios of applications within organizations. Proliferation comes with cost, all those sorts of things. We've seen a bit from our side recently where you have incumbent providers who have very high price points, and we've been able to replicate components of what they do from a data and AI perspective extremely quickly at a fraction of the cost. And so, we've had examples there where people are looking at seven-figure annual costs to do things like manage master data, or you can come in and build that on a data platform, deliver the same capability for a fraction of the annual run cost.
Yes.
In there. You see a number of organizations, I think it's Shopify and a couple of others, are thinking about like building all their own internal software. I think that's crazy because you've got to manage it and look after it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but we're seeing this come through. And so how do product vendors protect this space? Like, do the incumbents win? Or what happens in this space as we start to see more of this come through?
I think from a group CIO perspective, I think there's always going to be a place for the big ERP vendors. But from my perspective, what I want my ERP to do is be my solid transactional system. And what I want to do with it is make sure it has no customization and it stays with a clean core. And that my data that I run my organization with is secure. Then these vendors like to sell a lot of edge products as well. But I think that's where the space will get disrupted because there are many different ways to solve that edge modular structure now. And like you said, I mean, do you buy like a GRC to analyze your risk from a large technology vendor now, or do you solve it with, using your data platform and building a model across the top? And I think for me, that's where the challenge will be. But I think, for those bigger ERPs, there'll always be a place. And they're very embedded into many organizations, governments and things such as that. So I think they just need to also be thinking about how they're redefining themselves. I guess we talked about agentic AI as well on that. And from my perspective, it's how do they create a value proposition on that? So where will there be embedded agentic AI agents into the product and the core transactional product? And I see value in that. But as a group CIO, you're always thinking and asking yourself the question of how many agents do I want in my organization? And then how do I manage them? So, there'll be a task there for product companies to make that strategy very clear and simple.
And so expanding on that, the idea, there's a couple of competing schools here, right? Like a lot of people will go and say, I want a best of breed product and I've got this enormous portfolio to pick from and I can have all these wonderful things under this proliferation of all these technologies in my organization give me best of breed. Or you can have a more converged strategy, like you said, like my ERP is my transactional system, and then I've got a layer that sits on top of that, which is more uniform. Keen on your thoughts. Are you leaving value on the table by not being best of breed?
So I think, depending on your organization, realistically, but from my perspective, product companies, if you buy too many products, then you have to integrate them. Integration obviously creates complexity to a point, but also then you're constantly having to upgrade, pay for the licenses on all the different modules. I think best of breed serves as a place in an organization for something that you require as a core competitive advantage, where you don't want something that's off the shelf. But I challenge best of breed even now, because core competitive advantage is about being able to make competitive decisions that your competitors can't make. And you can do that with data and models. So long as you've got your right strategy and you can challenge yourself and your use cases appropriately, then you can deliver value through a platform-based model with, AI and the use of data.
What I want to do now is we have a little section at the end called the Fireside 5.
Oh, great.
And so we want to just pick into a couple of these areas in here. And so in the next 12 months, what role do you think, or roles do you believe are going to be most significantly disrupted by AI?
So I think like global service centers, absolutely. EAs and PAs from an administration perspective, back office IT, because a lot of that can be augmented, and then finance and people processes that are related to AR, AP and people services. So I think anything that's running standard transactions in an organization, look out, it can be disrupted.
And sorry, I know this is the Fireside 5, but I'm just keen to... So the technology capability is evolving, but you've got organizations full of, lots of historical bureaucracy, policy, procedure, and a thing called human beings in there. Do you think that it's going to be a struggle to influence change in organizations, or do you think in the next 12 months or 24 months, organizations will just find a way because the value prop's so high?
Yeah, I think personally it will be a struggle in most organizations, but what will challenge us is that the technology companies are reinventing themselves.
Yeah.
So you've obviously seen in the press that, they're bringing in more agentic AI and they're redefining themselves. And I think that that's going to challenge boards in other organizations to get their people within their organizations to think differently.
Second one is, what have you changed your mind on significantly in the last 12 months?
Agentic AI and the speed of adoption. I think, I don't think any of us saw, how fast it would grow exponentially to deliver value. And I think, even as a group CIO, you just wonder, how can we all keep up? And so, I spend hours and hours each week reading up on it to, just keep at pace. So I guess that's going to be a key challenge for all of us.
Yeah. Excellent. What's the most painful lesson you've learned in your career?
Painful lesson. There's probably been many, but I think, getting the right engagement from the start on anything that you're trying to deliver strategically is definitely something that you need to do. And when you don't do it, it can be very painful.
What do you know now that you wish you'd known at the start of your career?
Be curious constantly and be a continuous learner. I think I learn more now than when I started my career. For me, when I started my career, it was more about following the policies and procedures and just doing a good job. And I think, now it's really about, you've got to be constantly evolving yourself and iterating. And
Wonderful.
It's exciting though.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your most contrarian view about enterprise AI that most smart people would disagree with?
I think I said this before, that the role of a consultant is dead, and the role of, maybe the challenge is the role of the CIO dead. I think these are the challenges that we've got to ask ourselves moving forward. And what is the role of the CIO now that we've got agents?
What do you think it looks like?
Exactly. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, I think, we've really got to challenge ourselves. Which parts of our role can we automate? Can we redefine? And then, therefore, what is the value in the future and what do we bring to any organization that we work with?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, look, really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for the invite.
For joining us today. And I think it's an exciting world out there. And for all of the data and AI leaders and practitioners out there that tune in and listen to this, I think there's some really good takeaways from this today about like what to expect in tone from the top, how we think that's impacting and changing organizations. But look, thank you for coming in and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It was lovely to see you all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.